Imagine clawing your way from a dirt-poor farm in Depression-era Texas to the blood-soaked fields of Europe, becoming the most decorated soldier America has ever seen, only to smash into a fog-blanketed mountain at the age of 45. For half a century, we were told it was just a tragic accident. New evidence whispers something far darker. Strap in, because Audie Murphy's meteoric rise, Hollywood glow-up, spiraling demons, and the bombshell twist behind that 1971 crash read like a thriller no screenwriter would dare pitch. Audie Leon Murphy drew his first breath on June 20th, 1925, in a weather-battered sharecropper's shack outside Kingston, Texas. Summer sun baked the planks until they warped, and winter gusts whistled straight through the knotholes. The Murphys rented every acre they farmed, paying landlords in cotton bales while the Great Depression choked prices to pennies. Neighbors remembered Josie Belle Murphy ladling watered-down beans, making 12 children swear they were just as full as a Sunday roast. When Audie was 14, the once fertile topsoil turned to dust clouds that rolled across North Texas like dirty thunderheads. He and older brother Buck wrapped wet rags across their faces, herded siblings inside, and shoved quilts against cracks to keep suffocating grit out of their baby sister's lungs. One particularly vicious black roller stripped the vegetable patch bare in minutes. The family's mule collapsed of dust pneumonia a week later. Emmett, Audie's father, disappeared soon after. The boy simply found his work gloves hanging on a nail and never saw him again. Josie's death 2 years later left Audie the de facto head of household with only a 5th grade education and calluses for collateral. He chopped cotton for 50 cents a day, shot jackrabbits at dawn, and bartered pelts for flour. Every coin went into a Maxwell House tin hidden beneath rotting porch boards. Emergency cash to keep siblings together. The hardship didn't harden him. It tempered him. He began each dawn with a whispered vow, "If no one else can protect this family, I will." But the real crucible lay oceans away, where artillery and ice would test whether grit could become legend. Audie tried the Marines first. Rejected. The Navy? Rejected again. Too small, son. Undeterred, he downed 3 bananas, filled his pockets with fishing sinkers, and convinced an army doctor to look the other way. Basic training barely started before he petitioned a transfer to the front. "Let me fight," he wrote, "or send me home." North Africa's dunes blistered his boots. Sicily's cliffs bloodied his palms. Anzio turned the Mediterranean surf red. Audie's men swore he could smell danger and move faster than fear. In France, he once low-crawled 60 yards through machine gun fire, stood up behind the nest, and ended the fight with a single grenade before his platoon reached the halfway mark. He earned 2 Silver Stars in 1 week. Then came January 26, 1945, outside Holtzwihr. A German company, supported by tanks, shattered the tree line. Audie ordered his riflemen to fall back to a final position, sprinted to a burning tank destroyer, and manned its .50 caliber despite the risk of exploding fuel. Snow hissed against flaming steel while he radioed artillery grids, stitching the oncoming wave with tracer fire. An hour later, the enemy withdrew, leaving the field littered with helmets and twisted rifles. Audie's right leg bled freely. His trouser leg had fused to melted hull paint. He refused evacuation until every surviving soldier was accounted for. By VE Day, he wore every valor ribbon the Army could bestow, 33 decorations total. Yet his diary that night read only, "I'm glad it's over. I'm tired." Hollywood would soon chase that tired grin. But stardom carries a price no armistice can pay. Studio boss James Cagney, awestruck by magazine photos of the baby-faced warrior, flew Audie to Los Angeles in 1945. The hero arrived with 1 duffel bag and a single suit, crashing on Cagney's couch while agents circled like paparazzi sharks. He studied diction in the mornings, took writing lessons in the afternoons, and woke screaming most nights. By 1950, he was sharing marquee space with Tony Curtis in Kansas Raiders. 5 years later, To Hell and Back, a film adaptation of his own memoir, knocked Mr. Roberts off the top box office slot. Across 44 movies, he rode more cinematic miles of sagebrush than John Wayne walked on celluloid. Critics noted a melancholy behind those blue steel eyes, crediting natural depth never guessing it was memory, not method acting. Audie wrote country western ballads during sleepless nights. Shutters and Boards, his plaintive ode to abandonment, climbed radio charts when Dean Martin crooned it in 1962. He later joked the royalties kept his feed bill functional whenever film checks ran late. He also produced overseas pictures like Trunk to Cairo, 1966, shot on location amid real-world tensions that made prop rifles redundant. Between takes, he toured Israeli forward outposts, swapping stories with paratroopers half his age who knew his wartime legend by heart. Yet even blockbuster grosses couldn't silence night terrors, or the debts quietly stacking behind casino doors. Because long after the curtain calls, daylight can't erase the gunfire, echoing at 3 a.m. Doctors called it battle fatigue, prescribing barbiturates with side effect lists longer than Audie's ribbon rack. He ditched the pills after waking in a cold sweat, convinced enemy patrols were breaching his Beverly Hills yard. Instead, he locked himself in a ranch bunkhouse and white-knuckled 6 days and nights of withdrawal, emerging gaunt but clear-eyed. In 1963, he spoke openly on national radio about invisible wounds, decades before PTSD became standard vocabulary. Financial wounds proved nastier. He trusted handshake deals that dissolved in smoke, backed 2 oil rigs that struck seawater instead of crude, and let well-tailored acquaintances parlay his name into business ventures that soured fast. By 1968, the IRS threatened foreclosure on his Van Nuys property. Casino markers from Vegas to Baton Rouge totaled more than $250,000. Heavy money in late 60s dollars. Desperation bled into paranoia. Audie started wearing concealed pistols even on studio lots. Certain shadowy collectors were tailing him. The paranoia wasn't entirely unfounded. Private eyes hired by creditors clocked his routines, photographing license plates of anyone he met. Marriage troubles added weight. His first union with actress Wanda Hendricks imploded after constant flashbacks left her afraid to wake him. 4 days post-divorce, he wed airline stewardess Pamela Archer, chasing steadiness. They built a modest home in Toluca Lake and welcomed sons Terry, 1952, and James, 1954. Despite bankruptcy rumors, Audie insisted his boys attend public school. "They gotta learn regular folks," he said. Pamela later recalled hiding bounce check notices so her husband could finish shooting schedules unburdened. The week after the 1970 assault arrest, Audie met unofficially with a Teamsters intermediary about securing Jimmy Hoffa's clemency. Witnesses at the Polo Lounge spotted him in terse conversation with 2 men known to Justice Department investigators. If those talks failed, someone stood to lose lucrative contract leverage. And history shows mob bosses rarely leave loose ends, all of which makes the next decision, climbing aboard a small twin engine in foul weather, feel less like fate and more like the final domino. May 28, 1971, dawned gray over Atlanta. Pilot Herman Butler filed a visual flight plan to Martinsville, Virginia, expecting to skim beneath cloud ceilings most of the way. Despite 8,000 logged hours, he'd flown the Aero Commander 680 just 6 times. Audie nearly bailed on the trip, grousing about mountain weather during a pre-flight coffee, but relented when told the Virginia deal could wipe out a slice of his debt. Witnesses near Chambly saw the aircraft dip twice after liftoff, engines coughing back to power, minor hiccups common to turbocharged prop planes. 2 hours later, residents of Catawba Valley heard an engine roar echoing off Brush Mountain before a bone-shaking thud. Crash site investigators found sheared treetops, a cratered fuselage, and charred remains of 6 passengers. One mangled briefcase reportedly contained unsigned oil lease documents and a personal ledger with some names circled in red ink. Pages that vanished somewhere between local deputies' photos and the NTSB's Washington Evidence Vault. The 1972 final report cited, "Pilot continued VFR flight into IMC. Government jargon for flying by sight in zero visibility. No mention of missing paperwork, no cockpit voice recorder to consult. Case closed. Except too many things at the scene didn't fit accidental math, and rumors breed best in unanswered silence." Veteran search and rescue volunteer Laura Haynes swore she saw control surface panels loaded onto an unmarked van the night after federal teams left. Locals counted 3 different badges: NTSB, FBI, and a third agency no one recognized, scouring the wreckage at dawn, whispering over clipboards. Pilots reviewing Butler's credentials pointed out he held an instrument rating. Crashing below contours suggested either spatial disorientation or catastrophic control loss. Fuel analysis showed regular octane, but curious metal shavings appeared in the fuel strainer. Trash? Sabotage? The lab never issued a public memorandum. Tabloids spun theories. A mob hit to settle gambling debts. CIA wet work silencing a war hero who'd glimpsed Southeast Asia ops. Insurance fraud orchestrated by one of Murphy's shadow investors. Most headlines faded within months. Yet families of the other victims sued the charter company, citing maintenance irregularities. That lawsuit settled quietly in 1975 for an undisclosed sum. Still, the story smoldered, waiting for fresh oxygen from 21st century tech. In 2024, aerospace historian Dr. Felix Al-Hayat launched Project Brushlight, crowdfunding drones, LiDAR scanners, and a volunteer army of hikers armed with GPS tags. Over 6 weekends, they mapped every shard still buried on Brush Mountain, uploading 3D meshes to an open-source archive. Among thousands of fragments, 2 aileron cables showed surgical clean cuts, not the ragged pulls typical of impact failure. Metallurgical lab fluoresced them. No heat discoloration, meaning severed before the post-crash firestorm. Parallel to Brushlight, journalist May Ramos filed Freedom of Information requests. She unsealed 1971 Bureau memos labeled Organized Crime, Hollywood. Lines redacted for decades now revealed surveillance of Subject Alpha, discussing covert shipping pacts with a figure codenamed Jacket Man. Mob slang for Teamsters. Murphy's initials appeared in the margin of a cryptic expense voucher referencing Cairo Trunk Film. Then came the whistleblower, a retired avionics contractor identified only as Earl, who testified via Modulation Masked podcast that 2 weeks before the crash, he was ordered to swap out the Aero Commander's autopilot servos at DeKalb Peachtree. The new servos lacked certification stamps. He voiced concerns and was told, "Just follow Work Order 17, sign the log, forget it." Earl kept the original servos, now tested to be fully functional. For skeptics, these revelations still lacked a documentary smoking gun. But the mounting pile of anomalies pushed Virginia's governor to petition the NTSB for docket reopening. In March 2025, the board agreed to a limited reassessment, citing new physical evidence. A full re-exhumation of findings looms, and insiders hint forensic recreation could confirm whether severed cables alone doomed the flight, or if pilot error sealed a sabotage already in motion. If America's folk hero was clipped not by clouds, but by conspiracy, what other quiet burials dot Cold War history? Murphy's sons, now silver-haired grandfathers, issued a joint statement. Our father faced every foe in daylight. Whoever did this hid in darkness. We want sunshine. Their Change.org petition cracked 1 million signatures in 8 days and counts legislators, Medal of Honor recipients, and Hollywood stars among supporters. Academic circles scramble to contextualize the revelations. Film historian Dr. Leah Cho notes Pentagon memos courting leading actors for soft power narratives during the 1950s, Murphy included. Veteran psychologists debate whether state secrecy around combat celebrities exacerbates PTSD by forcing dual lives. High school history teachers update lesson plans, using Murphy as a prism for discussing hero worship, mental health, and government transparency. Meanwhile, the Audie Murphy VA Medical Center in San Antonio has seen a 14% uptick in walk-in counseling since Project Brushlight's videos went viral. Counselors report patients saying, "If Audie could admit nightmares, so can I." His name continues to save lives, half a century after his own was lost. Hollywood, ever quick to option a headline, already fields dueling miniseries pitches. One frames Murphy as noir martyr. Another, produced by a major streamer, leans into underdog patriotism. Both hinge on whether the NTSB's new docket will drop definitive proof or another cliffhanger. Either way, the spotlight is back on a warrior once more, But this time the script is written by truth instead of publicity men. Audie Murphy outran mortgage notices, Messerschmitts, and typecasting. Yet he may have been ambushed by a foe wearing no uniform at all. Whether the severed cable theory withstands forensic fire or collapses under new data, it fractures the easy narrative of a hero felled by fog. It forces us to ask how many laurels conceal unanswered phone calls, ignored hospital bills, or secret dossiers. Remember him then, not as a granite statue or paperback legend, but as a restless farm kid who carried every sibling, every platoon mate, and every audience on his narrow shoulders. Remember that courage isn't bulletproof. It bleeds interest on old debts and wakes screaming at dawn. And remember that unfinished stories sometimes matter more than tidy endings, because they prod us, decades later, to dig, to question, to shine lights where comfortable myths prefer shadow. Next time you pass a dusty VHS of To Hell and Back, or catch a late-night Western with a wiry lead and haunted eyes, pause a moment. Ask yourself what stories we still owe the people we pin medals on. Ask what it means if the flag they fought for folds into silence when the battlefront shifts home. Because Audie Murphy's final chapter is still being edited, in court filings, FOIA releases, and hearts of soldiers who whisper, if even he could be betrayed. Vigilance is every citizen's burden, and that, perhaps, is the most unsettling twist of all.